But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Coming to you live from, icy but windy.
Just don't even.
Sometimes it's sunny. Yeah, right. This is the...
Yeah, it is sunny here, and lucky us, the workmen outside my house who've been jackhammering and stuff all day, they seem to have gone away for a while, so...
Well, after you've been jackhammering for a while, you need to get away, get like some water, maybe some proteins in you before you can go back to jackhammering again.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I gotta do.
Come back, so yeah.
I think we're talking about different things. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe.
Welcome to Rantzerker number 107. Nora Loreto tweets about Humboldt bus tragedy, gets BTFO'd on Twitter, and then the CBC chimes in. This is a dramatic story. And we're going to be watching a video. My name is Brian Martinez. I'm joined by Karen Strawn. Girl Writes What? Allison is not here because she sucks. And
yeah, she sucks giant fucking hairy kiwis.
That's right. She is experiencing testicle difficulties. And I would know. But no, actually, Allison's out doing taxes. So we may never see her again because taxation is theft and Allison has a tendency to resist. So we're going to be going through this video by the CBC, and it is entitled Online Outrage Over Humboldt Tweet. Before we get into it, it might be good for us to give you guys some context. This is actually related to a kind of a big story that happened in Canada. So I want to let Karen sort of like get us all caught up on everything that you know of anyways.
Well, okay, so I'm not going to be very big on the details in terms of, where they were headed and all of that. But it was essentially the Humboldt Broncos hockey team, which is, I think, an A-level team. So it's men from the ages of probably, young men from the ages of probably like their mid to late teens to early 20s.
Yeah, the youngest victim is 16. The oldest was like 24 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I only know this because my guy used to play AAA hockey, and he played when he was 15, and he was one of the youngest people in his on his team. So essentially, what happened was they were traveling to a hockey game, and you got to realize Humboldt, Saskatchewan is a pretty small place. It's not like there's a whole bunch of little. There's not like there's a whole bunch of teams in that town. There's a lot of traveling that you do if you play hockey in a small town. You're always traveling by bus to some other town to have a tournament or or a game or whatever, right? And so they were en route to, I think they were en route from Humboldt to Saskatoon, but I'm not 100% sure. And they're at an intersection, highway intersection. These are small highways. They're typically, they don't have on ramps and off ramps. They have stop signs, T intersections. They are one lane in each direction type highways, often. And I guess at this intersection, when either the truck or the bus was turning onto the highway, they got in a collision, and I believe initially 14 of these boys were killed, and I think that may have actually gone up.
It has. May have gone up. So in the crash, 16 people died. 15 boys and 1 woman. She was like the athletic therapist or something like that. So, but there was this young hockey team, young men and boys. 16 of them died. I think 13 were injured. are still in the hospital, or at this point, I believe, and this is a lot of deaths. And it was already a bit strange that the way it's been reported, because I looked online for some sources on it, and I've noticed that a lot of the headlines just say 16 people die in accident, but it was 15 boys and 1 woman, right?
Yeah, no, of course. And one of the things too, like, and I think that the CBC has largely, at least what I've seen, right? And I'm gonna give them some credit for this, because like, I listen to The Current in the morning on the radio, because it's what's playing on CBC One when I'm driving my kid to school and running errands, and they really did a very, very sensitive, compassionate treatment of it on The Current. Even though The Current is a show that I generally abhor, because it's hosted by a cunt feminist named, Anna Maria Tremonti. And she's just an absolute, like, oh God, she's just such a feminist. And so I think that the initial coverage of the tragedy was very, very sensitive, and it was very compassionate, and it really touched on how small Humboldt is, that pretty much everybody in that town is, 1 or 2 degrees of separation from the families of one of these people who died. Yeah. Right. And so, and you're looking at even people in Saskatoon, people all over the place who, you're talking about families who billet these hockey players and have billeted the same hockey players for a number of years, and they get very, very close to them and form bonds with them and stuff like that. So it's a regional thing, not even just a Humboldt thing, but a regional thing. It's, it affects people in Saskatoon. It affects people all over the place in terms of, these were people that I knew and cared about. And the initial coverage, at least on The Current that I was listening to, was extremely, extremely well done and very, very kind and compassionate.
Sure.
So I want to give them props for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the article I found that shows you photos, and I apologize for the color correction, guys, but we're doing this to protect us from copyright. So yes, the people all look like they're relatives of Shrek. This cannot be helped, because I needed to do it to protect us from getting any strikes. But they do go through and they list every single victim and a little bit about them. And yes, we are looking at a really small town. So, this is like almost, it's like all their boys almost, or it's a lot of their boys. And a lot of their
not necessarily, because a lot of these boys are not, like, this is the way midget AAA and stuff works, is that, I mean, my guy was born and raised in Edmonton, and he lived in Edmonton, and then he went and played for a team like all the way across Canada. So he was essentially drafted by a AAA team on the other side of the country. So these are not necessarily born and bred Humboldt guys. These are not necessarily boys whose families live in Humboldt. They are often young men who are essentially transferred across the country. So they may be from all over the place, right?
Yeah. And so following that, this was something where a lot of Canadians were very, this is a tragedy. This is a big deal. So they all got together and they started a GoFundMe to raise money for the families of the victims. I mean, this guy here, he's 16 years old. This is a 16-year-old that was killed. So they managed to raise, it's pretty amazing, in a very, very short amount of time. They are now at $13,714,066 when their initial goal was just $4 million. It's something that's like, it's so like, I mean, I think that most people think that, okay, $4 million is sort of, it's going to cover the funeral costs, and it's going to cover, the time off work for these grieving families and that kind of stuff. Right. But it's, I think that people just, they want to do something. Yeah. Right. And something above and beyond that. And if all you can do is throw money at it, then, and it's obviously not going to bring them back, but people were hoping it would be good for something. right?
Yeah.
And it is an you know, it's an amazing thing that these people pulled off. All charitable donations, very, very well done. So we're gonna get into the video. I've given you some context on the background of what happened.
Yeah, because I'm actually crying right now. So make me angry.
Okay, all right, here we go. Here we go.
In the wake of the Humboldt bus tragedy 1 week ago, a new Canadian GoFundMe record was set online. More than $10 million has been raised for players and the families affected. A freelance writer, though, named Nora Loreto, made a comment online about the outpouring of support, saying this 2 days after the crash. I'm trying to not get cynical about what is a totally devastating tragedy, but the maleness, the youthfulness, and the whiteness of the victims are, of course, playing a significant role.
All right.
Okay. The youthfulness. Okay, she's saying playing a significant role in the generosity. Okay. This is what I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay. And yes, the youthfulness, I think, definitely plays a role in the outpouring of financial support. Absolutely 100%. I'll give her that. It's a snarky fucking comment, right? That, oh, you're only giving money to these families because these were young people, right? I think we would all agree that it's more tragic when somebody dies at 16 than when they die at age 70.
Absolutely.
I think that's just a normal human response, right? So, and I think it's cunty to even bring that up. But the fact that they're male and they're white, that somehow is why. Yes. Is why they got so much money, when in reality, and I'm guessing she's talking about the fundraiser here, right? Or maybe the coverage, right? That it was all over the news for days.
She's making the male white privilege argument. Yes.
Yeah, that we value these people who died because they're white and male, and we would not comment on it if it was a bus full of young women.
Yeah, right.
That wouldn't cause any kind of stir in the media or outpouring of sympathy and dollars. Yeah, not at all.
No. There wouldn't be like hockey teams everywhere wearing like a bandana, like a
in
special,
the most effeminate color possible. Yeah,
yeah, right.
Like, honestly, what the fuck? And you have to realize too, she has no understanding of the culture around this, right? Because, the Chicago Blackhawks and other NHL teams plugged this fundraiser, right? They plugged it on Twitter. They were just like, please do something to help, right? That's because of the culture of camaraderie in hockey. When my guy was, playing he was in a, sort of a camp, right, where they had professional players, and he made some amazing moves. He was 15, made some amazing moves, and one of these pros said, "Oh, you got some moves, kid. And who you play for?" And he told him, and my guy says, who do you play for? And he's like, the Blackhawks. It was actually the Chicago Blackhawks. Nice. And my guy says, oh, so I guess that makes you think you're better than me, huh? And the guy just freaking laughed his ass off, right? There is so much kind of mentoring and camaraderie, and there's a whole bunch of competition, but around that there's a lot of sort of broader community spirit within the NHL and within hockey in general, amateur hockey, semi-pro, pro, the whole bit, right? So, I don't think she understands how any of that works, and how, having some major league teams, some NHL teams endorse the fundraiser, call for support, all of those things would absolutely 100% get people opening their wallets for something like this, and that they're not doing it because these young men are like, these NHL teams aren't doing it because these young men are white and male. or even necessarily young, it's because they were on that bus 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? And they lived that kind of life back then, right? Which is maybe moving away from your hometown and your family and living in a billet for the next 6 months in order to play hockey, right? And it's a completely different life from the life of a regular kid. And they went through that, and that forms kind of an invisible bond with these boys, right? And the understanding that, like, how many buses was I on traveling to some freaking town on some crappy little highway with no traffic, no real traffic control, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
All right, let's continue, because the rage is only, you would think this is probably like the peak rage. No, this is not. It gets way more interesting.
Reaction to that message was swift and it was angry. As of Wednesday, Loreto tweeted again.
Well, I mean, as it should fucking be, by the way.
What a bitch. What a bitch.
I mean, yeah, how can you even say, yeah, they were mad at her? Well, yes, look at what she fucking said. Okay, so let's continue.
She had more than 7 million Twitter impressions. That's the number that actually generates interaction or replies from others. Along with some praise, Loreto received a lot of online
You may be the worst Canadian alive.
hate, including death threats and promises of boycotts against the publications she works for.
Okay, so she says death threats. Now, there were no death threats. Yeah,
I hope you die is not a death threat.
No,
I'm coming to kill you. I'm coming to your house, bitch, and I'm gonna cut your throat. That's a death threat. Right?
Yes, and also bear in mind, these screenshots that they're showing, they're likely, and I would bet money on this, these are the worst ones they could find. Because if there was a real death threat that was like, I know where you live and I'm going to come to your house and kill you, that would be all over the television screen. But it's not. So just bear that in mind. These are the worst offenders that they could find. That's what I think anyway.
It usually is.
She's written an article for Maclean's, and she freelances.
Nasty woman, possible Jew.
Well, I guess it's possible.
Thank you, Pablo Sanchez. Well, I don't think she is. I think she's Italian or something, but
whatever.
Okay.
Are there no Italian Jews?
I don't know how that works. I don't.
Well, okay, the Jew part runs through the mother, the matrilineal line.
Yeah.
So you're Jewish if your mother is Jewish, but the last name is generally the last name of your dad. So it's entirely possible that you can have some like super Italian last name and be a Jew.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, okay, let's continue.
For the Globe and Mail, for example. All right. We're showing you a few of the messages available online here, and these are far from the worst.
Bullshit. I'm pretty sure those are the worst.
It's a problem we've seen before. Someone says something controversial online and it goes viral. And then the horde descends. As a country, is the level of discussion and debate falling because of that? And what should we do when the level is lowered to threats, death threats, and bullying? Let's hear from our panel. In Ottawa, Jeremy Diaz, he is the executive director. Jeremy is the executive director of the Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity.
Okay, so
why is he wearing an Oilers jersey?
Because he likes hockey, dude. Hello, fellow hockey fans. I too like hockey and hockey players and feel that this is a sad
Oilers jersey?
Yes, I believe so. It's definitely a hockey jersey, but I can't tell what it is.
Yeah,
so
I think it is. It looks like it, but
Executive Director of Gender and Racial Diversity is going to talk on the matter of what this woman said.
Yeah, I don't understand why.
I wonder what direction this is going.
Okay, the discussion is about bullying and harassment and mob mentality online. So you should have Jonathan Haidt on here, or someone like that. Oh my God, my phone's going off here.
Yeah.
Hold on for Zoidberg.
Okay.
There we go. All right. That's
Why
my
not?
ringtone, by the way.
Okay, let us continue.
Sexual diversity. In Toronto, Brittany Andrew-Amofa is a senior policy research analyst at the Broadbent Institute. And in Toronto is Michael Corin, author and columnist. We reached out to Nora Loreto for a response to all that's happened this week. Here's what she had to say. As a writer who tackles systemic oppression, racism, sexism, etc., no one who follows my writing was surprised by my tweets. Inequality follows us in death as it follows us in life. But
So kids die in a fucking bus accident, and we still need to talk about how privileged they are.
Yes, we do. We do.
Jesus fucking Christ. My I got this video and story from Lindsay. She was livid. She's still livid about this.
Oh yeah.
She was like, I want to hit somebody.
Well, what's frustrating about it too, right, is because a lot of the disparity. Oh my God, I'm gonna kill that phone. A lot of the disparity in terms of the differences, right, between the racial makeup of the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, all of those things, right? Is like, in order to get good at basketball, all you need is a patch of concrete, a hoop, and a ball, and you can practice to your heart's content, right? And you get together with your buddies, and you can put together a game, and you can get good at it. And all it takes is like very, very little expense, right? And almost all high schools, as far as I know, and most junior high schools or middle schools have basketball teams, right? Same with football. Football you don't generally get into until high school, but my son's high school has a football team. His gym teacher told him he should try out because he's like gigantic. And at age 15, he's like 6'2" and 220 pounds.
Wow, hit the growth spurt, did he?
God, he's covered in stretch marks. It's just insane.
Wow.
Oh yeah, just from growing so fast. And but you essentially have the school absorbing a huge amount of the cost, the fundraising effort, the organizational aspects of it. You know, the school actually takes care of it, the uniforms, all the padding, everything else, right? But with the NHL, there are no school teams. So you have to pay for that yourself. And for my guy, when he was 15, and he's 35 now, so this was 20 years ago, it cost his parents about $13,000 a year just to have him in hockey.
Yeah.
20 years ago at that level. So you're looking at the fact that most hockey players are white. That's sort of one of those socioeconomic things. And as socioeconomics become more sort of equalized in terms of outcomes, and they have been over the longest time, right? You see more people of color going into hockey, more parents of color putting their kids of color in hockey. So now we're having, you know, a growing number of black hockey players and whatever. But whereas you didn't really see any black hockey players, I don't even know if there were black hockey players in the NHL 20 years ago. Were there?
Hockey players in the NHL?
Yeah.
I mean, they probably were just really as rare as it wasn't like they couldn't be, but I just don't think blacks were interested in hockey.
I mean, and it is a cultural thing too, right? In terms of why would a black kid be interested in hockey when, you know, all of his buddies are going into football?
If they're going to take an interest in sports, it's going to be usually like what everyone else in the area is into. So likely, you know, football, basketball, or baseball. So
yeah.
Unless they're like, you know, from the Caribbean, but that seems weird. But then again,
well, I mean, look at Tiger Woods, right? You know, like the reason why he got into golf is because his parents were filthy rich.
Yeah, it's just, I said it's just about like where you're at and what the people around you are into. You know? I mean, up here there's like, you know, lacrosse. There's like Hispanics that play lacrosse because they went to Lane Tech, where that's a big deal, you know. Okay, well, anyway, let's continue with the video because we're only about 2 minutes in. It's okay.
In life, but my tweets have been misconstrued and smeared into the faces of so many in mourning, and I'm so angry and so sad that this has caused others pain.
All right, wait. How can it be misconstrued?
Yeah, I don't know.
When you're just saying the whiteness, the maleness, and the youthfulness is
the only reason
definitely a huge factor. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
No one should face what I have. Tens of thousands of messages, death threats, threats to my family, phone calls, and threats to my various employers. The messages have been mostly vile. This is
they
the
should
cost.
be. Your message was vile. You stupid cunt. Why would 2 days after?
Yeah, right.
2 days after this, right? Like you literally have hundreds and hundreds of people directly involved whose lives have been just absolutely devastated, right? And then you have all of the people who know them and see the suffering that they're going through, right? And then you have all of the people who are listening to the story and thinking about it and all of this stuff and fully cognizant of all of that fallout in people's lives, right? And you decide that it's, time to politicize a tragedy, not just politicize a tragedy, right? But politicize the fact that the only reason why you believe people even care is because these guys were white and male.
Yeah.
Which is also completely fucking dumb and stupid.
But my 6 Gorillion death threats on Twitter. The 6 Gorillion violent tweets that she got.
What I'm gonna say, you know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna give her a dose of her own medicine, and I'm gonna say, well, I'm not supposed to care about women. Apparently, I live in a misogynist society. So just eat the fucking death threats and shut the fuck up. I don't feel sorry for you. And you know why? It's because I'm misogynist like the rest of us. Not because you said something fucking fucked up and stupid.
Yeah. 16
why didn't you just go and fucking pull down your pants and rub your ass all over those people's graves? Oh, wait. It's because they weren't even buried yet.
Yeah.
Fuck.
15 men die in bus accident. Female journalist most affected.
Yeah.
Mostly vile. This is the cost of daring to mention systemic racism in Canada. And it
was systemic racism in Canada? Okay.
Shows that we have some very
was there like a young man of color on that bus that people were like saying, oh wow, we care about the white ones, but like that one with the suntan, he can go fuck himself.
Well, the closest thing to it is a guy named Logan Boulay, whose eyes are a bit on the squinty side. He might have some Asian in him, maybe.
There was a guy who looked vaguely Hispanic up above.
Well, he might need scroll up. He might be one of the dead ones, or living ones rather. Maybe he survived. No,
it was just above. Yeah,
Tyler Bieber. This guy. Mark Cross?
He looked like he might not be 100% white. I mean, but like, what the?
Well,
fuck?
Again, I'm not even gonna play that game. There was a woman. Maybe we can make a big deal out of that. But
yes,
I don't know. It's in before women are considered a race, and we could be racist towards them. All right, so let us continue.
Reflection to engage in once we allow for the necessary space for mourning. All right, Brittany, let me begin with you.
Did she just say
allow for space for mourning? Yeah.
Yeah. What a fucking whore. Oh my god. Yeah, we'll give them a couple of days. And then we'll just dive right into like fucking sensationalizing and politicizing this issue.
Yep, she shovels shit over the wall, like bashing these people because they're white males that were in this bus accident. And she does it right after it happens, and then when she gets a bunch of blowback, she's like, "Can we wait a couple of days for the pain to die down before we start this conversation that I just started?" Can you guys wait a little bit? The bodies are still warm.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Think of the terrible backlash to Nora, and do you think she, and her response?
Well, first I do want to say that was a very powerful statement, and she said some really true and valid and authentic statements or words within that statement that I think we should reflect on. And those words are inequality, systemic racism, and the fact that she's been experiencing violent threats. And this isn't new for anybody who speaks out against injustices within this country. There's always a risk that comes with that.
I can't believe we're talking about this. I mean, I know the CBC did a good job of covering the actual accident when it happened. Go ahead.
What was the injustice that she was pointing out?
That the boys were getting too much money?
Sympathy?
Yeah, that we were giving too many sympathy to these men. Can't have that.
Honestly, like, okay, it's very, very rare in Canada for a large number of people to be killed all in one fell freaking swoop. It's not common at all. I think the last freaking similar thing that happened, I think it was another hockey team, on a bus that got in a crash, was like in the 1980s, if I recall, right? That was sort of the last time that happened. And you have to realize too that, I mean, Canada has like this massive hockey culture.
Yeah,
a lot of
like
the bus driver himself, I think, played hockey, and there was a picture of the chief of police in Humboldt or whatever, and the mayor maybe, and they were both hockey players when they were boys. So I mean, you're looking at this like incredibly tight-knit sort of culture around hockey, and then you're looking at this massive fan base, right? That I mean, it was, and already there have been 2 days of this outpouring of, this is just so horrible, and like what a tragedy, and these boys had such bright futures because they were so talented, and we just feel this huge national outpouring of sympathy, right, for their families and all the people affected, and then she decides to poke that, like she doesn't know anything about Canadian culture, right? If she's gonna poke something like this that happened within hockey culture. Like,
well, that's a bit insensitive and intolerant of her.
She knows nothing, Jon Snow, about hockey.
Yeah. All right, let us continue.
And particularly when women, people of color, racialized communities, indigenous communities, when they do speak out against systemic racism, they often risk having these type of violent tweets issued towards them. So what I think about all of this is, yes, the tweet may have been inappropriately timed, but nobody deserves what Nora has gone through over these last couple of days.
Have you?
I'm just thinking, okay, who do the families of those boys, or the boys who are alive and clinging to life in hospital, do they deserve to hear that they don't deserve the support and the sympathy and the compassion that they've received because they're white, and there's just too much whiteness and maleness going on? Mm-hmm. Like, do they deserve that? Like,
unbelievable. We've moved from a tragic bus accident that killed a bunch of men, and now it's being shifted, and we're talking about women of color and indigenous communities and LGBTQ, but basically everybody except the people who died. And it's and I mean, I guess they don't have her and her cronies tweeting like 170,000 freaking tweets to that effect to them, right, on Twitter. But like, honestly,
the whole idea that you can poke something like this, I mean, like, I know when I'm poking something, and I don't complain necessarily about getting backlash for it. I complain when I'm being lied about. But I don't complain when people are angry at me for poking.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, fuck.
All right, let us continue.
You experienced it yourself, Brittany?
Yes, I have. I have. Anybody,
you don't say.
Ask individuals who constantly speak out against injustices within this country, especially within a public way, often are always risking, it's often at a risk of themselves and the people who are upset about maintaining the status quo within this country.
Michael, what do you think?
All right, I'm just pausing it for the banana because I think
I just gotta say, as an MRA, I have to agree with her. There is often backlash, and the backlash can be very angry, and it can be very hostile, and it can even be very threatening. But that's what you get. And I'm sorry, like, don't fucking complain about people being angry at what you say, especially if you word it like that. Like, she didn't even put any caveats or disclaimers or anything like it. Like, to say something like that in a tweet, like, if I wanted to make that point that she was trying to make, I would put up a 20 fucking minute minimum video explaining my reasoning, and it would be full of, don't get me wrong, here's what I'm really trying to say. I'm not begrudging the families the sympathy that they've received, blah, 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 blah. Here are some issues I'd like to bring up, right? That is the way I would approach it. And I'd still get backlash, but at least I'd be able to say, yeah, I didn't just fucking do a drive-by fucking tweet.
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
Okay, let's continue.
I think the timing was probably ill-advised, but if you read what she said, she was in no way diminishing the grotesque horror of what happened. She was acknowledging, as any sane person would, how grotesque it was. What she was pleading for is a leap of empathy so that every community, every person who suffers should be treated with equal compassion and love. And
well, we do that already. Why do we have to work under this assumption that, like, when things happen to people and we tend to focus on it in the moment, that somehow we're taking it away from everybody else?
Well, and as well, I mean, like, you can't tell me that. I mean, you can go ahead and tell me, or try to tell me, that indigenous people, right, would have less sympathy, right, when we have this, like, massive multi-million-dollar federal inquiry into missing and murdered indigenous women, even though
I think more indigenous men are missing or something like that.
Even though not just that, not only are more indigenous men missing and murdered, but the solve rate for indigenous women, the solve rate for murdered indigenous women is higher than the solve rate for men in general in Canada.
Yeah.
So, it's slightly lower than for non-indigenous women, but it's still higher than the solve rate for men in general. And the solve rate for indigenous men is, like, super, super low. So
apparently, these people think that empathy is like money. It's not created. It exists in limited quantities. And if you give it to someone, you're taking it away from somebody else.
Yes.
And on top of that, it's like, when I see this, it's like this. It's something I just thought about. It's like, if your dog died, was hit by a car and died, and you were grieving over it, and some people, they gave you gifts and they gave you attention and they offered you sympathy, and then I came along and I said, well, it's really bad that your dog died, but have you considered, this that we live in a systemically racist country, and that there are women being raped on college campuses as we speak?
Yeah.
Dry your eyes, because bad stuff's happening somewhere else.
Yeah,
and I don't care that you're close to this problem,
Yeah. or if somebody approached you and said, well, okay, like, I'm sad that your dog died, but what about all the cows and chickens?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, Well, because I loved this particular dog, you fucking tard, right? And because hockey is Canada's sort of national sport. I don't know if it is officially, but I'm sure in the de facto sense, it is our national sport. It is our national pastime. It is more beloved to Canadians than baseball is to Americans. Because if all of the fucking beer kegs in a baseball stadium went dry on game day, everybody would wake up like Homer Simpson and go, wow, I had no idea how boring this game really is. Right? But essentially, you're looking at somebody who's striking at the heart of our national identity, somebody who's striking at the heart of a tragedy 2 days after. We still don't even, at this point, I think we still didn't, like, some of the people who died hadn't yet died. Yeah. If I recall, because initially there were 14 declared dead, and then 2 more died after that, right? So, I mean, you're looking like this entire and like right during the upswell of all of this support, and you're looking at a culture in itself, this hockey culture, not just the fan culture or whatever, but the actual player culture, that was all pulling together over this. And, you know, at all levels, from like, you know, peewee hockey to, you know, to midget AAA to you know, amateur or semi-pro, pro, all of them, all pulling together. Yet, you know, all kinds of, and this is like, yeah, you're gonna fuck with that?
Yeah.
Really, you're gonna fuck with that? You're gonna hop on this hill 2 days later, before all of the people have even died who are gonna die, and none of the bodies have had time to cool off, to get cold, right? And you're just gonna jump on this pile of fucking bodies, some of whom are still breathing, to preach your fucking message that we shouldn't really feel as sorry for these people as we do.
Yeah. And then
which
when
is really
when you
kind
get
of what it is.
When people call you on it and they tell you they're not happy with what you're doing,
you clutch your panties to your chest.
Yeah.
And go, you know, you're threatening me.
Yeah, these violent tweets. These
my God.
Look, tweets can be edgy, but that doesn't mean they actually have an edge. All right, moving on.
All you need to do to deal with, I mean, I guess this isn't like dealing with edgelords and trolls, right? Because all you need to do is say your memes are faggy or whatever to trolls, and eventually they get bored and go away.
So cringe.
But yeah, but you know, or that was last week's salt shaker gif. Try this one now. But you know, like there was actually genuine outrage over what she said, and she just needs to own it. And frankly, you know, all she needs to do is say, yeah, I fucked up. You know, it was a stupid thing to say, particularly when I said it. And I'll sit down and have a think before I log on to Twitter again.
Right.
You know, maybe something like that.
Sounds like a mature thing to do, which is very
And
rare and in short supply.
And then log off of Twitter. Don't look at it for a week.
Yep.
You know, people get tired of
close your eyes
and go away, right? So.
Yep. Close your eyes, nigga.
Look, we have to be honest here. When it comes to, for example, Indigenous women disappearing, being murdered, inner city black kids, gay men in Toronto's village, is that same compassion and love and shared grief observable? I would say not. But that
yes, it is. What
I
are you
don't
fucking
think so.
talking about?
We have a national fucking inquiry on missing and murdered Aboriginal women and only women. And we also have this massive, just because a serial killer, right, managed to avoid detection for a while in Toronto, and this is like kind of a weird case because he was targeting gay men, but he was often
that almost sounds like that's a men's issue too, but okay.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of the men that he was targeting were sort of they were a little bit flaky. Right, they were maybe new to Toronto. You know, nobody in the city would really notice if they were gone.
Well, like the Jeffrey Dahmer, I think it was like that too. where he would go and pick
yeah,
up gay men, that if they disappeared for a while, people wouldn't, you know, start worrying and looking for them. And that's how he was able to get away with it for so long.
Yeah, and so I mean, you're looking at it. I mean, it was the same with the prostitutes in the Pictons in Vancouver, right? Which was actually, that was like a seriously botched case. There was a guy, he called himself a geographic profiler. He was working for the RCMP at the time, or maybe Vancouver City Police, and he warned them like 2 years before all of this was discovered, something like that, that there was a serial killer in Vancouver who was targeting prostitutes. Okay. He said, this is what is going on. And they fired him. They said, fuck right off. Nothing's going on here. And then we discover this freaking pig farm just outside of Vancouver, where this guy is luring prostitutes because they had a after hours private club on the property, and these two brothers, Robert and I forget their names, the Picton brothers. They had this this after hours club on the property. They would invite people to party, and they would and then the killer would kill these women. He would put them up on the meat hooks and do all kinds of fucked up shit to their bodies, and then he would send them with the pig parts off to the rendering plant, to be made into things like moisturizer and lipstick and gelatin and things like that. So he would essentially disassemble their bodies into small enough pieces so that they were sort of not really distinguishable from the pig parts. That were going in by the truckload into these big rendering plants. So he essentially had this all going on. And yeah, this is a vulnerable population of women who nobody's really going to notice that they're missing right away, because who knows, maybe they just got a John who's willing to pay them for a week and fill them full of coke or whatever, right? Maybe that's what happened. So, and they don't have family who are in regular contact with them, because they're prostitutes and they're drug addicted and they have all kinds of problems. Maybe they're homeless. And so, I mean, like, you're looking at vulnerable populations of people, inner city Black youth, right? Vulnerable populations of people who often get into trouble, and people don't necessarily notice when they go missing until later. Right. And one of the things, too, about the Indigenous women thing is that the vast majority of those cases are within they occur within the Indigenous community. Yeah. So this is not a, just like all murders occur, all murders of any person of any race are more likely to occur within their ethnic or racial group or their community. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So, you know, like, this is not necessarily like the indication of systemic racism that would be the issue in the missing and murdered Indigenous women would be the lack of police response. Well, but their solve rate is higher for the Indigenous women than it is for men. All men. Yeah, than men in general, right? Yeah. So that says a lot. And by the way, you said there was a large, multi-million-dollar initiative. Is that a publicly funded one, or was yes, it's a government inquiry. Okay, it's a government inquiry. It's a federal government inquiry. Okay. And just as a reminder, that they made every effort to exclude Indigenous men from. So it's almost a systemic initiative that's being taken because it's coming from the government. Yes, and it's almost a systemic exclusion of men from the conversation. Yes, in favor of treating women as if they're special victims. Right. And also, for those of you guys who are watching that may not know, the CBC stands for Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Company? And it says right here under the video, CBC is a publicly funded broadcaster. Yes, CBC is a publicly funded broadcaster. So it's like the BBC. It's paid for with tax dollars. So that's important to note as well.
Oh, not entirely.
Not entirely.
Okay.
Not entirely, but we have advertisements and stuff like that on CBC. But yeah, it's heavily government subsidized.
Mm-hmm.
And Trudeau increased their funding. That was one of his promises before he got elected.
There you go.
There you go.
All right, moving on.
That's in no way to diminish what happened. One of my sons was quite a high-level soccer player, travelled to New Zealand and Portugal and England and the US. And yeah, my heart was in my mouth often when he was travelling. Of course, we understand the fear, and it's entirely understandable.
Yeah, but this isn't a fear of something happening. This is something that actually happened. Your son didn't die when he was traveling to New Zealand and all these other places. He's alive. But if he did, and then some woman grave stood and made a comment about how you're only getting money after your son's death because you're white and male, I think you might have a different perspective on this.
Just maybe.
Yeah, just maybe.
Understandable that we would be sensitive to these kids. They are like us. But surely we can define ourselves by more than just someone being like us. So what she said was not actually wrong. Now, the response to her, and I've corresponded with her a bit.
Okay, just pause it. Does anybody think that if a bus full, of filled with a bunch of young women, let's say college, it was a college women's basketball team, and it was completely proportional in terms of racial and ethnic diversity and all of that. Maybe it was like disproportionately black. Does anybody think that if something like that happened in Canada, right? Mm-hmm. Or a women's hockey team, let's just say a women's hockey team because of hockey culture, right? Does anybody think that they would have not gotten the same outpouring of support? Like, does anybody think that if a truck, like if a busload of high school soccer players, right? Women, girls soccer players, or soccer players, so it's full of Hispanic kids, and it's full of Sikh kids, and it's full of, black kids, and it's like Somali kids, and it's full of, all of these ethnic groups that are around in my neighborhood, right? Muslim kids, does anybody think that if this kind of tragedy happened, or even just a school bus full of fucking kids on their way to school?
Yeah.
Right? That because, some of them were like not white, people wouldn't care?
No, it's absolute bullshit statement. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
I mean, and there certainly wouldn't be somebody that said, that was like a highly sort of known journalist that would enough at least that they would get attention and make the news, that would say, well, I think the fact that they're women probably has a lot to do with the money. Like, that would be pretty in poor taste, Yeah.
And it wouldn't. And then on top of that, if somebody said that and they got backlash, they'd be told, yeah, you deserve it.
Yeah, they'd have to suck it up. Like, I'm sure that there are some people that would have said that, but they would also expect that people would be very unhappy with it, and they'd be prepared.
I can see a handful of hardcore MGTOW saying something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's continue.
Since all this happened, has been extraordinary. Vicious, misogynistic, racist.
Wait, what? Misogynistic? Oh, because she's a female journalist. Right, I'm sorry. I forgot. If you criticize a female journalist when she's being a cunt, by calling her a cunt, you're actually misogynistic. That's end of story. We don't have anything else to discuss. You're full of hate.
There were even anti-Semitic attacks. She's not Jewish, but some of these people were so manic.
Well, saying that she's probably a Jew is not actually anti-Semitic by itself.
No. And regardless, I think that probably is. I don't know. I don't know whether that was just some edgy meme lord or whether it was like. Yeah. And because there is a lot of
some alt-right guy that just was like, oh, that looks Jewish. Let me go ahead and label it, right? Yeah.
But I didn't see any brackets, so.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody needs to get caught up on their lingo. Gotta add some echo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
and so violent. And I think this is a point that has to be made. They were so compassionate towards the people who died in Humboldt that they wanted to kill someone.
They did not make any death threats.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, that they wanted somebody to die. Yeah, see? Because that's what grief does. That's what, I mean, like, listen, look at me. Like, am I a crier, Brian?
Not generally.
Am I a crier? Right? And I talk about this shit, and I get all teary, and I have a hard time keeping my voice, you know, steady. You know, it gets wobbly, right? Because it's so horrible, right? And I think about my kids, my boys, and I think, okay, well, if Sam does try out for the hockey team, or not the hockey team, the football team, right? He's going to be on a bus traveling to tournaments and stuff like that. You know, like, or he could end up with a concussion, or like, you know, life-changing injury. You know, so I think about my boys, and I put myself in those parents' position. I put myself in those boys' position, who are recovering. And I'm like, you know, yeah, if somebody said that while I'm going through that, I'd want to fucking punch them in the face. If she stood in front of me, and I'm willing to go on record about this, because I'm not going to go track her down, find out where she lives, and knock on her door so she can, like, so I can punch her in the face when she opens it. But if I was standing over my son's hospital bed wondering if he was going to survive or ever walk again, okay, or ever be the same again, ever talk again, be able to feed himself, right? Stuff like that, right? Okay. Or if I was making funeral arrangements for my son, and that bitch walked up to me and said, well, I think this is a really good opportunity to really look at problems with the fact that your son is getting much more sympathy than I believe someone of color or a woman, or, you know, someone who's a little older would get. And I really think that you need to think about that. I swear to God, I would pick up the nearest blunt object and I'd fucking clobber her with it.
Yeah.
Right? I would.
Absolutely. I understand the rage.
And I think that all of those tweets, right, are essentially indicative of people who are putting themselves, you know, sort of in that situation, imagining, okay, like, if she actually came up and said this to the face of any of these people involved, right? You know, or if she came up, if I was involved in this and she came up and actually said it to my face, yeah, I would probably be going to jail.
Yep. Worth it.
Yeah, worth it.
Absolutely.
They were so sensitive to other people's grief that they were screaming for someone to be killed and going after her family. And I have to say, I mean, it is principally women and people who speak out about injustice. But about 5 years ago, when I had a change of opinion on equal marriage and some moral issues, I saw the gates of hell. You know,
he saw the gates of hell, and they're and they're on Twitter.
But he's like, look at what he's saying here. He's saying, I have experienced this exact same thing as a white man, but I'm pretty sure it's primarily women who speak out about stuff like this, who get this.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how do you know? It's happened to you, Michael Corrin.
Oh my God. I saw the gates of hell. And it came in these boys, some of these boys might actually be in hell, but he saw the gates of hell, and it was on social media.
My kids, they were trolled. My wife.
Oh my God, getting trolled is the gates of hell. I get it now.
Was written to. There were various nasty attacks on me. I lost various jobs, by the way, after campaigns were successful. And that's just me. I'm not that important in all this. But
no, but seriously, like this is so this is what happened. There are campaigns, and you lose work because of it.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, and so why are we turning this into an issue of that it happens to women and it happens to people of color when it happens to anyone who pisses anyone off online?
Yeah, this white man, it happened to him, so.
Like, have these campaigns to phone this writer's Nora whatever's employer, Have any of the campaigns come to fruition? Has she been fired? Has she been dropped? Has she been toasted? Did she end up like Adria Richards?
I think she died on Twitter. I think she's dead. I think those violent tweets got to her, and this is a kind of discussion around the cause of death on Twitter.
It's the social autopsy.
Yes.
I mean, some of them, it was understandable. I left the Roman Catholic Church. I should lose some Catholic columns. But there were other people who...
Yeah, somebody said he's a conservative Catholic columnist. He's actually left the Catholic Church. I think he's swung the other way or something.
He was conservative Catholic. He used to be a commentator on Sun News, which was where Ezra... it was actually like a news channel, like regular cable news channel in Canada, and but they couldn't stay afloat because they didn't want to force cable providers to provide them in their packages. But then they finally sued. They went to the CRTC, Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission, and asked that they be added for the purpose of balance in the news, right? Like you can't only have left-wing news channels in a country that, because CTV is left-wing and CBC is left-wing, and the government, the CRTC, mandates that cable providers provide those in their basic cable package. And Sun News didn't want to do that. Finally, when they realized they were like running out of money because people weren't carrying them, they went to the CRTC and said, look, okay, we want to actually ask you to make the cable companies carry us. And they won the decision, but by then it was too late. They went bankrupt. So essentially, that is where Ezra Levant was. And then he started Rebel Media after the downfall of Sun News. So essentially he was in tight with Rebel Media, well, not with Rebel Media, but with Ezra Levant, Brian Lilly, all of those guys on Rebel Media. He was in tight with those, and then he kind of changed his politics. I'm not sure what brought about his change in politics, but I can see why some people were annoyed. So
yeah, I could see it. I mean, that's gonna happen if you're a public figure and you change your politics, no matter where they were and what you move to. So
yeah, drastically changed his politics.
There were campaigns on social media, and most papers, if they're not a big enterprise, if they get a couple of dozen letters orchestrated by a central organization, they feel threatened. And then, of course, the call to withdraw advertising and boycott. And if you don't have the facility to fight back, people will say, I'm sorry, we really are, we're apologetic, but we have to let you go. This is the mob mentality created by social media. Look, the best thing about social media is it's uncontrolled and unedited. The worst thing about social media is uncontrolled and unedited.
Right. Yeah.
That happens on all sides. I'm sorry, it does. You're looking at PewDiePie because he made some freaking joke on Fiverr, and it's like where two Indian guys dance around waist deep in water and then hold up a sign and freaking make a statement, right? Gas the Jews or whatever it was, kill the Jews. And then subscribe to Keemstar.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But then you have people that actually get arrested for the shit they say on Twitter, like Goodfella and Count Dankula. So it happens on all sides.
It does. So.
Okay, speaking of which, I'm going to come to you in a second, Jeremy. This is a statement from Maclean's magazine saying, we'd like to clarify that contrary to misinformation, Nora Loreto has never been an employee of Maclean. She is a freelance writer who published one article on our website a few months ago. We had nothing to do with her extraordinarily inappropriate tweet regarding the Humboldt tragedy. We'll have nothing else to say on this matter or at the current time because we do not wish to distract from the tributes and grief being expressed on behalf of the victims, nor do we wish to feed into the torrent of abuse that Ms. Loreto has been subject to since publishing her tweet.
Oh, I was with you guys up until torrent of abuse. I was with them.
Right? It is. Well, I mean, it is abuse. It's not none of those tweets in and of them. And I keep saying this, and I keep trying to explain this, right? That when it's not technically harassment if 1,000 people leave one angry tweet each. That's not harassment. None of those people are harassing you. You know, it is just the mob, and they're all doing one little action that can't be defined as harassment. But when you're on the receiving end of that, you feel harassed, and you do, sure. And you feel abused, and it's like, okay, so I can understand. It's a really fucking unpleasant thing. It really is, and I get it. And I wish it didn't happen, but it does. Right. And there's nothing you can really do when it's 70,000 individual people all expressing their opinion in one tweet each. You know, like, there's no indication necessarily that the outrage started as some kind of concerted campaign or anything. People just saw her tweet. The tweet went viral. Going viral is essentially like, okay, you throw a vial of fucking virus out into the fucking atmosphere, and people catch it randomly, right? They stumble across it, it gets sent to them, whatever. It just like it's an epidemiological phenomenon, not a top-down organized phenomenon, right? So they're looking at this like, even Michael Corrin, okay, maybe there were some people who were organizing letter writing campaigns. But I'm guessing that 90% of the actual nastiness that he experienced on Twitter or whatever were just people who used to like him who hate him now. Yep. Right? So
it's not I do have a super chat I should read here.
Okay,
Darren Hightower, just one so far. Darren Hightower III gives us $2 Canadian, and he says it was a hockey team. Color and sex is irrelevant. Yes, of course. And there was also a comment that wasn't a super chat, but I just want to read it because I like it. Fireproof Troll said, "Torrent of Abuse is a good band name, to be honest." Yes, I actually do think it is. Probably some kind of metal, I would guess, but you guys let me know what kind of music Torrent of Abuse would play.
I think it would be like Sarah McLachlan-esque.
Oh, yeah, right.
You know.
It'd be a ska band.
In the arms of the angels.
Okay. No, new metal. Fuck new metal. Okay, moving on.
Jeremy, your opinion on all of this backlash?
I mean, what happened in Humboldt, hit all Canadians very deeply. I think all of us can
Don't you see my jersey?
relate to that experience of losing someone we care about.
I bet he's got a filter, like a hockey filter on his fucking Twitter.
Yeah.
Of course, losing young people in that dramatic and shocking way.
Young people. Young people. Did he say young people?
He did.
Did he say losing young people in that like shocking and dramatic way? Oh yeah, that makes it more tragic, does it? That they're young?
Yeah, it's almost like
does the fact that they're young make it more tragic to you?
People of youth.
Oh my God! Aren't you just proving this incredibly wise cunt, social justice, feminist, intersectional bitch's point? Why are you focusing on how young they are? Does that make it extra tragic? No.
No, don't you see that youth is a privilege? It's the latest.
Don't you think that if there was a bus full of fucking geriatric fucking patients on their deathbeds that got hit by a fucking truck, you know, a bunch of people who are probably going to die within the next week or so, right? That would be equally tragic. Like, people would feel the exact same way about it, right? They'd be like, oh God, they had their whole future ahead of them. And now it's all ended.
Don't be mad at him, Karen. He Hindu nothing. Okay, I'm gonna we're getting demonetized for that one. Okay, moving on.
Social media sphere is not the best place to have these sort of intellectual dialogues. And it's very difficult to have these conversations when we're feeling so deeply. It's very difficult to have these conversations when we're outpouring our love and support for people. And I think, speaking for myself, there are times in my life where tragedy hits the LGBTQ community. We can look directly at the Pulse massacre, and we hope that the nation stops and mourns. And
was there a Kickstarter for the Pulse massacre? I just want to look and see if they did a GoFundMe for that, because now I want to know. There's this claim that some people don't get money. So let's see, GoFundMe. Support victims of Pulse shooting. Florida, they raised $8 million. And then Equality Florida, another place, they raised over $9 million. So yes, they made more money for the Pulse shooting.
There were more victims.
There were.
But at the same time, there was a national outpouring of horror and shock.
Absolutely.
And sympathy over that. My guy was actually, when that shooting happened, he was actually on a flight to Orlando for a convention. And he landed and he was like, there's some fucking weird shit going on here. He landed at like 3 a.m. or something like that. He's like, there's some weird fucking shit going on here right now. I don't know what it is. Like, there's like a mass shooting. I don't fucking know. Like, what the hell? Yeah, it was, that got so much national attention. It got Trump
Yep.
to fucking get the RNC to applaud his pledge to defend the lives and the dignity of America's LGBTQ citizens.
Yep.
They applauded that. The Republican Party, the Republican base applauded him for that.
Yep. They did.
And part of the reason that they were willing to do it was because, oh my God, this tragedy is so horrible. This is like absolutely, absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm. Trump also responded to this bus accident as well. He actually called Trudeau up and he made a few statements, expressing sympathy and support for the victims. So he was aware of this and he was tasteful. Well, anyway.
For a change.
For a change.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, there were people who didn't stop and mourn. There were people who kept on walking. And
what? Okay.
That hurts. And I think Humboldt is a reminder that we as Canadians have the capacity for great compassion and great love and great financial support for people when they're in need.
Wait, the Pulse shooting, we didn't just keep walking.
Yeah. No, he said there were some people. So that's why I paused it, because he's basically saying somewhere on Earth there were people who didn't care or they just got on with their day. And they should not have done that because it means they didn't have enough empathy. But meanwhile, this bus accident and how apparently everyone in the world was touched by it, as opposed to the Pulse shooting. And clearly these 15 boys and the one woman are getting more sympathy than the people at the Pulse night shooting, because there were some people, and I'm guessing a lot of them are in the Middle East, that did not actually care that this happened.
They're like, oh, well, we didn't get to throw them off a building.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of disappointing.
There are some people of which the name, you wouldn't want to name any names, that were not moved by this.
Yeah. Fucking
or they were just mad that they didn't get to do it. But,
yeah. Oh, my God.
Oh, God. All right. It's just like, this is why this is upsetting to me, because they're making this about shit other than what the event was. 15 boys, because we're like 17 minutes past the hour, so I actually probably should wrap it up. Because we're getting, but you guys get the gist of everything. 15 boys between the ages of 16 and like 24. Something like that, are killed in a bus accident. 13 are injured, and we don't know, of those 13, if any more will die or if they will ever be the same again. Like, I don't think that there are too many that are going to be walking away with cuts and bruises. You know,
Yeah, no.
if this was a
Oh,
fatal crash.
They found debris. One of the reporters who actually went on The Current, that show by that cunt feminist Anna Maria Tremonti, he went to Humboldt to cover the story, and he went there for several days. He interviewed like dozens and dozens of people and all of that. But he went to the scene after the police actually opened it up again, and he said that they had cleaned everything up, right? The police had cleaned everything up that they could, but he said like hundreds of feet out into this canola field or whatever, right? You can still find little bits of pieces of cell phone screens and you know, and earbuds, right? And just like all kinds of just random stuff just strewn across this field for hundreds and hundreds of feet. And it's just like that gives you an idea of just how unbelievably fast that semi-trailer was going.
Yeah.
That tractor trailer was going when it hit that bus.
Right? I thought maybe the roads were icy because it was like in the winter, right? The roads get pretty slick in Saskatchewan.
They do.
Yeah.
And you know, that could well be it. But I believe it happened at an intersection. So I think one of them was turning on to, you know, and who the hell knows? I know truck drivers. They've said that, you know, sometimes you just hit a patch of ice, your truck jackknifes, you lose all control of it. And you just pray that there's no other vehicles in the vicinity and you're the only one who ends up like rolling over in the ditch. So, you know, or, you know, that when your truck jackknifes like that, if that's what happened, and you lose your load, right? There was one catastrophe in like an accident in British Columbia where a logging truck lost its load of logs. And it landed on a family in a vehicle and killed them all.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So, you know, it's just like.
According to Excalibur Blade, he said the semi-truck did not stop for the stop sign. That's what happened.
Oh, there you go.
So it just plowed through. And supposedly that's that. So that was, we're talking serious impact. And so these boys, even the ones that lived, are probably not going to be the same again. You know, if they survive, because you know this woman that they just recently pronounced dead, this just happened like a couple days ago. So you know, people are still in the hospital. They're not going to be the same. So this happens. And first, this feminist journalist comes out and says, I'm trying not to be cynical here, but then becomes cynical 2 days after this shit happens. And she gets a bunch of blowback. And then this program starts up.
Yeah, she gets 13 minutes on our national broadcaster.
Yeah, she gets 13 minutes
to pour her.
Right.
And it's
right.
And it's like, and 3 fucking commentators. And it's like, really?
And not only, but the thing is, not only do the 3 commentators and the anchor make it about her, but they also make it about themselves because each of them has their own story from their own angle, from their sort of like sliver of identity politics that they specialize in, that they want to bring to the table and say, well, what about these people? And it's like, but these kids just died. Can we just deal with this? And then after this is over, if you guys want to have your little, you know, progressive stack conversation, whatever. But this is not only is this, I don't think it's appropriate at all, but this is certainly not the time. And if people are angry and getting tired of your shit, because frankly, you know, it's getting old dealing with this. This is why, like, this is why the left is becoming so unpopular. You know, and they deservedly so. Like, this is really getting old. This is infuriating. We can't even support kids that are killed in a bus accident because they're too white and they're too male. And too young, apparently. Like, their whole life ahead of them. And so, yeah, but unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. Like, how we can't, it's just about that. I can't believe it. All right, let me, like, I guess Did you want to add anything else before we wrap up?
Oh God, you know, like Michael Corrin did say something smart, you know, like the best thing about social media is that it's free and unedited. And that's also the worst thing about it. And, you know, like Aiden Paladin's made this point a whole bunch of times regarding anonymity online and de-individuation and the fact that it has like really, really, really great benefits, but it's a double-edged sword. It comes with really, 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 really unpleasant drawbacks. And that, you know, like actually, you know, acknowledging the problem of this, you know, and not just anonymity, but the fact that you're not actually talking to somebody's face, because even that is enough to disinhibit you from saying something really horrible to another person, right? So, you know, the fact that you can acknowledge that there's drawbacks, right, and it has implications in terms of, you know, civility and perhaps on polarization of the discourse, you know, and things like that, and mob mentality, feeding a mob mentality, and all of those things, right? The fact that you can acknowledge that those things all exist doesn't mean that anybody is saying that the benefits don't exist, or that the milieu itself of social media needs to be controlled or to go away. At least that's not what I'm saying. But, you know, we do need to acknowledge that there are these problems, right? So, I mean, like, I can understand his point, and I can understand all of these people's points, and I can say, you know, like, I'm guessing that it was really unpleasant for Nora Loreto, or whatever her name is, for, you know, several days there, you know, and I'm not going to say nobody deserves that. But I am going to say, like, it's, you know, it's an unfortunate consequence of social media. So, and I can feel for her. I can put myself in her position and be like, oh, what the fuck? Like, this is really unpleasant, right? So, I mean, I'm okay with, like, going that far, but maybe she'll learn a lesson from this. I don't know.
Well, I'm not going to hold my breath on that one.
don't poke an entire nation in its sore spot.
Yeah.
You know, and then pour salt on it. You know, like, don't fucking do that. Like, that's just, you're going to get blowback, and that's just the reality.
I mean, I would like to ask that if that happens, you know, if it happened to me, if I got a lot of blowback for something, I would probably be the type to, despite the anger I might have for the fact that it happened, I would also be the type to try to figure out why it happened. But I'd have to be open to the idea that I brought it on myself. You have to be.
Or open to the idea that maybe, you know, your timing was wrong. You know, your point was erroneous.
Right.
You know, maybe you don't know everything. Maybe you have things to learn about, you know, even things you believe you're an expert in. Maybe you do, right? So, like that, it's really about humility in that case, right? It's to say that, you know, like, okay, I poked something and it fucking, and I landed, a whole ton of drama landed on my head. A whole ton of shit and abuse and nastiness landed on my head over it. I'll try to do better next time, right? And avoid that. And I think that's actually the more valuable lesson for her to learn, rather than that she's a victim of, you know, like, mean people on the internet. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. One other thing I want to show you guys is the like-dislike ratio on this video. You'll see that it didn't go over very well.
It really didn't.
So I included a link to it if you guys want to watch the whole thing. it doesn't get any better. It just sort of continues on. And yes, we start off about the tragedy, but they quickly shift gears and they make it about other things. So, you know, there you go. But I'm going to go ahead and take us out. We're going to go into the after show to watch the rest of the video. If you want to join us on the after show, it's www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. One smaller donation, or like pledge, I guess you can call it, gets you to watch the after shows. And another level lets you actually join in and be a part of the after shows. You can talk about the stuff that we go into with us. So that is patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. We hope to see you there. In the meantime, Karen and I are out. Thanks for joining us on the Rantzerker, and have a great afternoon.